I think he is going to surprise some conservative people, actually. And some very liberal people he won't surprise them because they already like him.
A bajillion pundits and politicians have already weighed in on this press conference that happened. So why the heck am I doing that, particularly since my focus is on families? Well, I haven't heard anybody talk about what I'm seeing in it, and I want to share it with you because I find it really exhilarating. They're all talking about how Trump loves a winner and he loves a media spectacle. And while I think that's true, and it might have put him in a frame of mind to be more receptive to Mamdani, what I'm seeing is Mamdani do 4 things quite strategically. It's a playbook, if you will, in order to have a productive meeting. And I want to share with you what those 4 strategies are because I think that they apply not only in the Oval Office, but also to any situation, any conflict that you're having in your family, perhaps with someone who you are really angry with that person, or you know that you see the world very, very differently than they do. So the 4 strategies that I see Mamdani using, and I'm going to show you clips from the press conference where he uses them to illustrate this. So first, he finds a shared purpose that he and Trump both wholeheartedly buy into. Then he sticks to that shared purpose no matter what anybody else, what he's asked, whatever. He ties everything, all the words out of his mouth. He just keeps bringing it back to the shared purpose. He is not interested, this is the 3rd strategy, he is clearly not interested in trying to argue Trump out of any position that he has. He doesn't want Trump to change a thing about any of his positions. He's not involved with all that. It's just all about focusing in on their shared purpose. And finally, he uses non-controversial language to talk about what matters to him about moving towards that shared purpose and what he imagines also matters to Trump. So, without further ado, let's look at him use that first method, that first strategy, which is outlining a shared purpose for their time together.
It was a productive meeting focused on a place of shared admiration and love, which is New York City, and the need to deliver affordability to New Yorkers, the 8.5 million people who call our city their home, who are struggling to afford life in the most expensive city in the United States of America. We spoke about rent, we spoke about groceries, we spoke about utilities, we spoke about the different ways in which people are being pushed out, and I appreciated the time with the president, I appreciated the conversation. I look forward to working together to deliver that affordability for New Yorkers.
Mamdani keeps using the 3rd person plural. We, and then he refers to New York City as our city. They are in this together. And he does not veer off purpose, even when a reporter tries to get him to.
You say you love New York City. Mr. Mamdani, does New York City love President Trump?
New York City loves a future that is affordable. And I can tell you that there were more New Yorkers who voted for President Trump in the most recent presidential election because of that focus on cost of living. And I'm looking forward to working together to deliver on that affordability agenda.
Mamdani does shift away from the question about whether New York loves Trump because that's off purpose. The point, the shared purpose, is about how much Trump and Mamdani authentically love New York. And then he pivots to what he heard from the people, some of the people who voted for Trump. One of the reasons they shared with him was because Trump, they believe that Trump cares about cost of living. So that is 100% on purpose. I don't think it's flattery. It is in alignment with their shared purpose. And that is what Mamdani is all about moving forward with. It costs him nothing to acknowledge what he heard from the people who voted for Trump. Mamdani even manages to tie a question about U.S. funding of the Middle East back to their shared purpose.
I think you feel very, very strongly about peace in the Middle East. I think
We desperately want it, and that's something that I shared with the president, that when I spoke to New Yorkers who had voted for the president last November on Hillside Avenue and Fordham Road, I asked them why. I heard again and again two major reasons. One was that they wanted an end to forever wars. They wanted an end to the taxpayer dollars we had funding violations of human rights, and they wanted to address the cost of living crisis.
A reporter sees if Mamdani will retract some provocative things that he said about Trump in the interest, I guess, of reconciliation and coming together. Mamdani doesn't do that. But when I was sitting there, I was like, oh my gosh, how is Mamdani going to maintain connection without sacrificing his integrity? Check it out.
Just days ago, you referred to President Trump as a despot who had betrayed the country. You said you'd be his worst nightmare and accused him of having a fascist agenda. Are you planning to retract any of these remarks in order to improve your relationship?
I think both President Trump and I, we are very clear about our positions and our views, and what I really appreciate about the president is that the meeting that we had focused not on places of disagreement, which there are many, and also focused on the shared purpose that we have in serving New Yorkers. And frankly, that is something that could transform the lives of the 8.5 million people who are currently struggling under a cost of living crisis, with 1 in 4 living in poverty. And the meeting came back again and again to what it could look like to lift those New Yorkers out of struggle and start to deliver them a city that they could do more than just struggle to afford it, but actually start to live in it.
Mamdani didn't retract anything, and it didn't escalate into a conflict. Because, and this is the third strategy that he's using, in addition to finding a shared purpose and sticking with it, he did not go into that meeting trying to convince Trump to change his position on anything. He's very clear in that statement. He believes he has his own positions, Trump has his positions, they've got lots of disagreement, and they're not going to go into any of it. They are focusing on what the disagreements are. He just keeps bringing it back to that shared purpose that he's stated over and over again. And this is so important, because if we go into a conversation with someone trying to convince them of something, well, they're going to react. This gives them something to resist against. This happens with Trump. You see it if you watch him all the time. He resists, and then the person becomes his enemy. Mamdani doesn't resist anything. He's like, hey, you do you with your positions. I'm doing me. What's the point here? Let's go with the point, which is, how can we move towards an affordable New York? A reporter tries to stoke some controversy with Trump by referencing some provocative statements that Mamdani has made about Trump. Surely Trump's going to take the bait. Nope.
You've referred to Mr. Mamdani as a communist. Could you describe why you feel that way? And also, will you do anything to stop him from arresting Prime Minister Netanyahu if he visits New York?
Well, we didn't discuss your second part of the question. And on your first part, I mean, he's got views that are a little out there, but who knows? I mean, we're going to see what works, or he's going to change also. We all change. I changed a lot.
The common ground that Mamdani clearly created in the meeting with Trump, and which Trump bought into, is working its magic. Of course they didn't talk about this controversial statement that Mamdani has stated previously about having Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrested, because it wasn't in the scope of the purpose of the meeting. And I also think this clip shows Trump seeing Mamdani as a real person who is not his enemy and is someone who is capable of change, just as he imagines he himself is. So, in addition to finding a common purpose, sticking with it, and always tying back everything that's said to it, and not trying to convince Trump to change anything, Mamdani also uses non-controversial language to talk about the reasons why he wants to make policy changes and the vision he's intending to have those policy decisions move towards, and how that will help fulfill this common purpose that he and Trump have.
One of the policies as well that Mayor-elect Mamdani talked a number of times about on the campaign was shifting the tax burden for property taxes from what he called minority communities to white-based communities and putting more taxes on white people. I also noticed that in your acceptance speech you didn't mention anything about America or Christians or white people in general, and so I didn't know if that was one of the policies that you guys had spoken about.
We focused on affordability, we focused on the cost of living crisis. What I will say is that I am very much interested in property tax reform because what we see right now in New York City is a system that is so inequitable that it can't even stand up in court. And the President and I spoke about the importance of not only building more housing, but also making sure that regulation of housing is something that is manageable to actually get through and not the cause of yet another weight that we see in our
But to
city.
be clear, you're continuing this idea of race-based property taxes.
No, to be very clear,
That's what you said.
no,
Yes, it is.
the use of the term was a description of neighborhoods, not a description of intent.
So you intend to tax the whiter neighborhoods more?
No, we intend to create a fair property tax system because we want a New York City that is not only fair and equitable, but also one that every New Yorker can afford.
Taxing white neighborhoods? Super controversial. Wanting equitable property tax that all New Yorkers can afford? Not controversial at all. And if the stakeholders work towards that vision and have a sense that their needs have been integrated into whatever policy decision would result in that, that's likely to be a policy change that will be adopted by everyone involved. And it starts with the framing of what's important to everybody with non-controversial language. Mamdani even manages to talk about his concerns about ICE using non-controversial language.
You've threatened to send federal troops to New York City. You both have differences when it comes to ICE agents in New York City. Mr. Mamdani, you've called ICE a rogue government entity. I wonder how you reconcile your differences on both of those issues.
Well, I think we're going to work them out, and I think that if we have known murderers and known drug dealers and some very bad people, you know, we want to get them out. And the mayor wants to have peace. We discussed this at great length, actually, maybe more than anything else. He wants to have a safe New York. Ultimately, a safe New York is going to be a great New York. If it's not safe, no matter how well we do with pricing and with anything else, we can talk about anything you want. If you don't have safe streets, it's not going to be a success. So
We discussed ICE and New York City, and I spoke about how the laws that we have in New York City allow for New York City government to speak to the federal administration for about 170 serious crimes. The concerns that many New Yorkers have are around the enforcement of immigration laws on New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs, and most recently we're talking about a mother and her 2 children, how this has very little to do with what that is.
Mr. Mamdani,
what we
you
did
answered-
is we discussed crime. More than ICE per se, we discussed crime. And he doesn't want to see crime, and I don't want to see crime. And I have very little doubt that we're not going to get along on that issue.
Neither of them wants crime. That is non-controversial. And within that context, Mamdani talks about the situation with the mother and her 2 children, making it really clear that whatever is happening with them does not fall into the crime category. Look, I am under no illusion that this conversation that Mamdani had is going to result in Trump stopping, separating families by deporting people like this father got deported. And I'm unlikely to stop getting emails from Oakland Unified anytime soon, warning of ICE activity in the area. But I do have a hunch that because Mamdani framed this issue around crime, what it is and what it isn't, I have a hunch that the conversation that he and Trump had about this mother and her 2 daughters had a very different tone than a typical conversation that Trump would have with somebody else who didn't frame the issue in the non-controversial way that Mamdani did. There is a moment in the press conference that shows what happens when the stakeholders do not have a shared purpose. it doesn't come up in relation to Mamdani. It comes up in response to a question a reporter asks about the Ukraine president, Vladimir Zelensky.
He'll have to like it, and if he doesn't like it, then, they should just keep fighting, I guess,
The suggestion that he made, though, was that if he doesn't accept it, that the U.S. would pull back its support for Ukraine. Is that
Well, at some
accurate?
point, he's going to have to accept something. He hasn't accepted. You remember right in the Oval Office not so long ago, I said, you don't have the cards.
Without a shared purpose, Trump reverts immediately to domination. He's got more power than Zelensky. Zelensky doesn't have the cards. He is going to be making a decision for Zelensky and not with Zelensky. But when there is shared purpose, and at least one of the stakeholders is skilled at doing the 4 things that Mamdani is skilled at, look what happens.
And I want to clarify your answer to Stephen Nelson. He asked about your comment calling the president a fascist, and your answer was, both President Trump and I have been clear about our positions and our views. Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay. You can just say yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay. It's easier. It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
Trump discovers that he has more in common with Mamdani than he thought possible.
We had a meeting today that actually surprised me. He wants to see no crime. He wants to see housing being built. He wants to see rents coming down, all things that I agree with. Now, we may disagree how we get there. The rent coming down, I think one of the things I really gleaned very, very much today, he'd like to see him come down, ideally, by building a lot of additional housing.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate way. He agrees with that, and so do I. But if I read the newspapers and the stories, I don't hear that. But I heard him say it today, and I think that's a very positive step. Some of his ideas really are the same ideas that I have.
You're a billionaire. You have a different address nowadays than you used to, but you used to call New York City home. Would you feel comfortable living in New York City under a Mamdani administration?
Yeah, I would. I really would. Especially after the meeting. Absolutely.
What makes you comfortable?
We agree on a lot more than I would have thought.
Mamdani's ability to forge common ground even results in Trump volunteering to take action to move towards the shared purpose that they have for a more affordable New York.
We talked about Con Edison. We have to work a little bit on getting the prices because, we've gotten fuel prices way down, but it hasn't shown up in Con Edison. And we're going to have to talk to them. If we're sending them fuel at a much lower price than it was a year ago, which is true, we have to get Con Edison to start lowering their rates.
Absolutely.
So what the heck does all this have to do with you and your family and the family conflicts that you navigate, perhaps with people who you have long-standing challenges with? These strategies, these 4 strategies, they absolutely work in the Oval Office and they work in people's homes. And so I'm going to give you 2 different scenarios so you can see how this plays out. Okay, so once again, the 4 strategies are: find a shared purpose, stick with it and tie everything back to it. Don't try to get the other person to shift their position on anything, and use non-controversial language to communicate what matters to you about the situation and also what you imagine matters to the other person. Okay, so let's do 2 family situations. Let's do the first one is an extended family dinner with someone who you disagree vehemently with, and things escalate, political discussion, Okay, shared purpose. You could propose a shared purpose to this person. It might sound something like, I'd really love us to enjoy our meal, enjoy our food, and enjoy each other. What would you think if our conversation this evening focused on what we learned from our relatives, perhaps those who have passed away, and what our hopes are for our future generations, what sort of world we're hoping we'll be leaving to them? What would you think if that's what we talk about at this meal together? Okay, and then if things veer off, to bring it back to, Okay, and so how would, if gun policy changed in that way for you, how do you see that as helping the generations to come? And then not trying to convince the person to change their position on gun policy. Just they have their position on it. And talking about what's important to them in terms of framing this issue and what's important to you. Maybe it's some kind of choice is super important to them, or a sense of tradition or belonging in their community. And so to talk about any issue that arises in terms of what's important to them and what's important to you from that non-controversial language place. Okay, let's do a second scenario, which is related to parents and younger kids. And this one actually comes from a family I recently worked with, and I have their permission to share this story with you, and I'll be obscuring all sorts of details so you won't know, and you won't be able to identify who they are at all. Okay, so the situation was that a mom found matches in her daughter's backpack. Yikes! And what happened in real life was she said that she did manage to get those matches out of her daughter's backpack and into a drawer, but she actually didn't have much peace of mind that they weren't going to be coming out of the drawer when she wasn't looking. So we had a chance to do a redo and a role play of what was going on, and the way I kicked it off was with shared purpose that I thought the daughter would buy into, and I had the mom pretend to be her daughter, and I said, hey, could we have a conversation about how to not burn the house down? You care about that, right? And yeah, absolutely cared about it. So shared purpose. Now, let's say the daughter starts talking about, you don't want me to put matches in my backpack, and you want me to go to bed, way earlier than I want to go to bed. Okay, so bringing it back to shared purpose. Daughter, absolutely. It's sounding like I do a number of things that are limiting, the amount of choice that you have, and you want to have more choice. And I'm going to write that down. And I want to talk now, though, to focus on how we can not burn the house down and have peace of mind they're not going to burn the house down, and have your need for choice met in that context and my need for peace of mind met. Okay, not trying to convince the daughter to change her position by me being like, it is bad to have matches in your backpack. Not going there. Not addressing that. I do not think that is going to result in common ground, because it would come at a lot of cost to the daughter to be like, right, Mom, you're right. It is bad that I did that. What kid what kid's going to enjoy doing that or want to do that and seek to collaborate from there, right? So not trying to convince, and also nothing to then push against with Mom, with that judgy, waggy finger, nothing to push against there. Mom is not the enemy. What we're doing here is figuring out together how we are going to not burn the house down. And then non-controversial language. So Mom might say, I think one reason I'm scared is about you having these matches in your backpack is I think that your friends are pyromaniacs. Okay, well, that would be pretty controversial language. So how could we translate that? When I've seen how your friends are when they use matches, I feel scared, because what I see is them striking many matches at a time, which if I were them, I'd have a hard time tracking what's burning. And they're doing it in rooms where there is no fireplace, nor is there a receptacle for putting for extinguishing the flames in a safe way, in a way that we can feel confident that they're actually going out. That's how you can use the Mamdani method in your own home. Simple, but not easy. Now, I don't know what Mamdani did to prepare for that meeting and the subsequent press conference, My hunch is he had a lot of support. And I think that is what each of us needs going into these challenging situations, is a lot of support. This is too difficult to do on our own. And so to help you with that, so that you actually could use non-controversial language, even around issues that you're really, really concerned about, or with people who you have long-standing issues with and maybe there's bad blood between you, I want to offer you the Conflict Prevention Jumpstart Kit, which is a free resource that gives you a workshop that I do called the Stop Family Conflict Workshop. There's a recording of that. There is a description of the 4 C's of conflict prevention and repair with a printout you can put on your refrigerator to refer to when any conflict jumps off. And there's invitations to the conflict repair cafes that I host on a regular basis, both online and in person. Information about how to get your very own Jumpstart Kit is in the description at the bottom of this YouTube video. All right. So until next time, may you create the kind of connection and collaboration in your own home that Mamdani was able to do in the Oval Office. Bye for now.